Time to talk property thanks to our partners, GJ Gardner. Hundreds of South Auckland property owners are selling because of financial pressure, and many are having to take a loss, with some even, wait for it, fleeing to Australia and leaving their debt behind. Andrew Chambers is the co-founder and chief executive at Tella Mortgages and joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you on.
Me.
Oh, good to have you here.
Yeah.
This is quite alarming. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Well, it's been a long, retracted recession, so we've been seeing stress in households for quite a while, but we haven't really seen mortgagee sales. You know, it's like you think back to the GFC or other recessions, you've got those pages of mortgagee sales out there. So we're just starting to see a bit more of that now, I think. Yeah.
How many are we seeing?
Not huge numbers, and I think I've heard people say that this recession's not as bad as others because we're not seeing them. You know, they're just not there. But I think the reality is that our banks have changed. The big banks are not as aggressive in the way they handle them these days, and they take more of a social approach to it. So we're not seeing those numbers that we have in previous recessions. Doesn't mean those issues aren't there. Yeah.
Also, we've heard from Ray White of the 50 properties that were for sale. This was at Ray White Monaco at an auction earlier this month. At least a third of them were being sold because of financial pressures. So, I mean, this is definitely a concern. But as you say, the banks might be a little more generous this time around.
They certainly are.
Accommodating.
Yeah, they've changed the way they approach these sorts of things. But I think, you know, if you look at what's happened and who's affected here, it's those guys that were last in on the party. You know, it's the guys that bought at the peak, and often first home buyers. So they're buying at 10% deposit on a $1 million house, a lot of them. And over the last year or so, we've seen those valuations just come right back to the point where they've got no equity in it. You know, it's the bank owns it almost. So I can understand where those sort of financial pressures that would drive people to run are coming from, because they probably don't own much of a house at the moment. So if they can't sit it out, you know, what do you do?
Well, that's right. And you might have lost a job or had reduced hours. You literally can't pay for it.
Yep.
Are we actually seeing people, you know, do we know of cases where people are actually fleeing?
On the whole, what we're seeing is banks switching off payments or doing payment holidays. We're seeing them doing interest only. So no, we're not seeing so much of that, but I think it will happen, and a lot of that comes down to the condition that you're in as a household and whether you can weather the storm. Job loss is a big one, right? If you two couples lost your jobs, Australia is probably looking pretty attractive.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was doing this is a bit random, but on my house, I was doing research trying to find out more about the street from, you know, years ago. And during the Great Depression, people abandoned houses because, so this is stuff, you know, things that we've seen, you know, in very deep recessions previously. It's not unprecedented for this to happen.
Yeah, it's happened many times in the past. There's lots of stories about London. Places like London where you had empty houses because foreign investors walked away from them in a recession. So yeah, it's you know, people will give the keys back to the bank if they don't own it.
Yeah. So what do you tell people, you know, in the mortgage business, what do you say to people if they come to you like, well, you know, my house is worth less than what I paid for it, I've just lost my job, or I've just, you know, had my hours cut?
So it becomes a conversation around what have you done with your existing bank? You know, what discussions have you had? Because I think the banks, you know, people generally fear their bank, which is an unfortunate thing, because actually most of these things can be resolved through conversation. So for us as advisors, and this is where financial advisors are really important at the moment, we can negotiate and help them through these things. We don't get paid for those things, but you take the good with the bad. And I think that's, you know, I'd recommend, even if you don't have a financial advisor and you need a bit of help, they're the people to go to. They're going to give you that service that you might not get directly from going into a branch or something like that.
Andrew, appreciate your time this morning.
No problem.
Thanks so much for being with us. Andrew Chambers, co-founder and CEO at Tella Mortgages.